This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, the Georgia legislature was ordered to create new legislative and congressional maps. So they did. And what's your reaction now to the maps passed by the Republican legislature?
These Republicans are just incredible. I mean, they're still gerrymandered. This is like Georgia was like, we're going to do just what Alabama did. We're going to do just what Louisiana did. They passed illegal maps. They get called on it. They lose in federal court. And so what do? They turn around with another illegal map. So look, this is not going to stand. They're not going to get away with this. I promise you, everyone listen out there, they're not going to get away with this. But it is incredibly frustrating. What's my reaction is frustration. It is anger. And we should all be angry because not only didn't they follow the law the first time, but they're playing games. They're trying to stall out the clock for 2024, and it's not going to work.
All right. Well, obviously, that raises the question, given that the legislature continues to violate the requirements of the judge's order here, as far as these maps are concerned, what's next in this process?
So look, my legal team, which represents the plaintiffs in this, they filed scathing objections. Everyone should go see them. They're on Democracy Docket. You can read them yourself. And there's going to be a hearing on December 20th on those objections. And I hope that the court, puts an end to this, because we cannot have a system of government if in our courts, every time Republicans don't like the outcome, they either ignore it, like they did in Alabama entirely. They just defied the court order, or their remedial efforts don't meet the mark. You wonder where a culture that gives us a Donald Trump, the nonsense he's pulling in court, where it comes from. It comes from the fact that Republicans all around the country view court orders and view complying with the law as sort of optional for them.
Mark, is there a possibility that the legislature will have another opportunity to gerrymander these districts, or at what point does the court just take over in this process?
Look, I think the court needs to take over this process. I think the courts in this country, and I'm not just talking about this case in Georgia, I'm saying more broadly, it is time that the courts assert themselves in fighting the anti-democratic fervor that we're seeing on the other side. So whether it is the never-ending second chance, third chance that Donald Trump gets on the gag orders, we talked about this before. If Donald Trump was a 20-year-old black man who was convicted of shoplifting or accused of shoplifting, he wouldn't be getting away with the stuff that Donald Trump's getting away with. And likewise in Georgia, the court, what we need the court to do is to take control of this process and say enough is enough, and we're going to have a court-drawn map.
But how many chances will they get at this point? I mean, I know that recognizing what Republicans are going to do and that they're not going to engage in good faith, that the court should take over. But is there a number of times that a number of chances that they have to be given before the court will ultimately do that?
So look what we saw in Ohio. What was it? 5 times the state Supreme Court struck down their maps and kept giving another chance. It's not the court's fault. I don't want people walking away from this thinking that I'm angry at the courts. I am frustrated because our system of democracy counts on people who have a fair election conceding if they lose, people who have a fair hearing, abiding by court orders if they lose. And instead, what you see is Republican defiance. They don't abide by electoral outcomes. They don't abide by judicial outcomes. They lack any shame, any sense that they need to follow the rule of law. And so I hope that the court in Georgia says, you had your chance. You didn't succeed, or you didn't try to succeed. You failed to pass a legal map, and now the court's gonna put in place another map. But there is always an impulse on the part of the courts to say, well, if the legislature is acting in good faith and they want another chance, let's give it to them. But I've said to you 100 times, maybe not 100 times, but I don't know what episode this is. But I've said to you a lot of times that that we have enough time to have maps in place for 2024, that it's not too late. It's still not too late, but it's starting to get later. And so, we need the courts, I think, to put an end to this back and forth.
And of course, when we do have any update, make sure to check out Democracy Docket to follow along with those updates. I'll put the link on this screen. It's also in the post description of this video. That's the free news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting in elections. Mark, how confident are you that new maps that are actually in compliance with the judge's orders, to your earlier point, are going to be in place by 2024?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. I mean, I was very confident about Alabama. I am similarly very confident about Louisiana. That's still bouncing around the courts of appeals, but is very far along. And I'm 80% confident about Georgia. It's a little bit further behind temporally, but the judge there, Judge Jones has done an excellent job of keeping this case moving. And the fact that he has a hearing on the 20th goes to show that he is going to keep these trains on time. So again, I don't want anyone to take my frustration here and suggest somehow I'm faulting the courts. It is just incredibly frustrating time after time after time for going on now several years that we just see intransigence on the part of Republican legislators, Republican elected officials, and the party of Trump overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's a system, to your exact point, built wholly on both parties acting in good faith, when we're seeing it be proven over and over and over again that Republicans aren't willing to act in good faith. They will every single time defy what the court says because they think it'll be either they think they have a chance to win, or just by virtue of the political benefits of delaying, so that they can show their base that they're not willing to to kowtow to the radical libs who want them to follow the Constitution.
See, that's the thing, though, just to interject here, that I hope everyone in the audience understands, is that Republicans are not defying court orders, case of Alabama, or not implementing them in a way that is legal, like the case in Georgia, because of genuine disputes over the law.
Right.
They are doing it because they believe that there is a political calculus at play, that their voters want them to defy court orders. They want them to interpret the law in ways that don't make sense. They want Rudy Giuliani, you and I were talking about this before we started. They want Giuliani to walk out of a courtroom and immediately say outrageous things in the middle of a defamation case where he's already been found liable and admitted that he committed defamation. It is part of the appeal of the modern Republican Party that it does not abide by these norms or the rule of law.
Mark, best and worst case scenario, what are Democrats looking at with new maps?
So look, I think that the court was very, very clear in the case of the congressional map. The state of Georgia, like the state of Alabama, has to create an additional Black opportunity district. In the case of Georgia, they cannot do it by sacrificing another district,
Right.
which was the shell game that they played here. And the same is true in Louisiana. There has to be an additional Black opportunity district there. And the law is just really clear on this. And so that's what we should expect. That is what everyone who believes in the rule of law should demand. Even if you don't believe that the courts got the Voting Rights Act right, the Supreme Court of the United States upheld the Voting Rights Act in the Alabama case. And that's the rule of law. Like that we cannot then have states just sort of decide to pick and choose their own adventure when it comes to actually complying with it.
Okay, so you mentioned Georgia Republicans sacrificing one district if they're going to allow a Black opportunity district to exist elsewhere. Would something like that pass the court and then have to be challenged in a separate proceeding, or would the court just look at this and say, no, you can't take away one Democratic district if you're going to add one? That's not what we're looking to do here. Or is the court just going to look and say, look, you gave us this specific district is a Black opportunity district. Now, if your law firm wants to challenge this other one, then that's a separate proceeding.
Yeah. So look, I can't guarantee that the judge will view the law the way we do, and we of course always follow court orders. I think the court will say that this remedial map doesn't meet the law, and that's what I hope and expect. But to your point directly, Brian, what I am hopeful about, what I do have optimism and gratitude towards, is that the judge said, look, they're going to pass a map. Presumably they did, and you plaintiffs can file objections, and then the court, will hear those objections in the context of the same case.
Okay.
So it's not like start over again,
Right.
right? So win, lose, or draw, I think, come December 20th or shortly thereafter, since the court probably will take a few days to, decide the case, we'll have an outcome. And, I hope it's favorable. I expect it'll be favorable, but I don't think it's going to be a start over again.
Okay. Let's end with this. Brian Kemp has signed these new Georgia maps into law, despite the fact that they are extreme gerrymanders. Can you speak on the dichotomy? And we've spoken about this a little bit in the past. Can you speak on the dichotomy between Brian Kemp's branding as a moderate and also his actions right now undermining democracy?
Look, he signed these laws, and Brad Raffensperger is the defendant, right? Brad Raffensperger, I wrote a piece that said Brad Raffensperger is a vote suppressor, or a Republican vote suppressor. You'll publish it, you'll link to it. It's on Democracy Docket. Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger are no different than the rest of the Republicans. That you look at what they have filed in various voting cases to support the voter suppression laws that have been passed, the public comments that they've made. They demagogue on anti-voter legislation. They support disenfranchising legislation, and they support illegal maps. Like I said, Brad Raffensperger is the one appealing the decision in this case to the higher court. So I am well past the day of tolerance and going along with this notion that somehow Brian Kemp is a different kind of Republican,
Right.
or Brad Raffensperger is a different kind of Republican. Kudos, they didn't commit treason. They didn't, when confronted with a president who wanted them to literally overturn a election by quote unquote finding votes. Could you imagine that we are praising people for not finding tens of thousands of votes? No, they get no credit. Brian Kemp gets no credit. And the fight for democracy in Georgia, it remains a fight between the people who want free and fair elections and fair maps and legal maps and the Republican Party.
And obviously, of course, for anybody watching, Marc and his team have been at the forefront of that fight. So to support them, please, again, make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket, the free news outlet they founded to focus on everything voting in elections. The link is right here on the screen. It's also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.